Welcome to another edition of the Defo Show with Lubie right here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, brought to you by Water Cleanup of Florida. As we move on in the playoffs, as we move on into the summer seasons, it can do a damage not only on your fandom, it can also do damage on your home, whether it be water with flooding or just other water issues, fire, mold. These are all words that scare us. They don't have to be scary. Now that you know that Water Cleanup of Florida is there to help you out with over 60 years of combined experience between Michael, Robert, and their staff, having licensed contractors. My big fear is not only trying to get things fixed, but it's having to go on to Google and research and look at stars and look at comments and critiques. I'm not great at that. I don't enjoy it. But with Water Cleanup of Florida there, you don't have to do that because they not only can come out and assess your situation, they can fix it for you. Plus, you can reach them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which makes it a lot easier than dealing with some other company. So give them a call, 954-579-0356, 954-579-0356. If you have any issues with your home, be it water, fire, mold, they will come out, assess the situation, and can fix it for you. You can also reach them on their website, wcufl.com, and on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Water Cleanup FL, Water Cleanup of Florida. We clean up your schmutz. It hasn't been schmutzy so far for the Panthers or the Heat. As the next round of the playoffs, Panthers second round for the first time since 97, 96. The Heat, Eastern Conference Finals for the, 8th time since 2006. We talked about the Heat side of things today with NBA analyst, writer, author, Sean Deveney. Today on the Defo Show with Lubie on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
The heavyweight champion of basketball would be Sean Deveney, our good friend, joins us here on the program. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing well, people. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Deveney.
I'm a little mystified, I have to say. You know, me, who follows odds and all degenerate activity very closely, whether I'm involved or not, I still enjoy just exploring the numerology of it and the opinions that these line makers have, which turns out to be sensational more often than not. I was surprised, a fairly lopsided price where the Celtics are now minus 175 favorites to win the series, even though they're underdogs to win the game tonight. Do you find that surprising that the Celtics would end up, A, being favored, and B, by something that's almost approaching 2-1 at this point?
Yeah, certainly they had their moments against Milwaukee, but they also looked vulnerable at times to me. They needed to come back and win that game 6 after blowing that game 5. And they did sweep the Nets, but even there was a lot of tight games in that series. They're coming in on a hot streak, no question, going back to around December 31st. They've been the best team in the league. But when you look at what Miami's done, the experience level they have, the coaching, with Eric Spoelstra there, I would have this rated as a pretty even series, certainly not lopsided the way the numbers are right now.
Sean, and down here we've sort of lamented, and I say we, I'm one of them, how the national media has forgotten the Heat. They were the number 1 seed. They were a top 3 or 4 seed pretty much all year long, unlike the Celtics, who sort of tanked it the first half. The Heat's worst stretch was like 4 games, and then they went on to reel off victories in a row and played really strong the last month of the season. Yeah, they struggled a little bit versus Sixers, but again, they've been pretty consistent these playoffs, both the Hawks and the Sixers. And again, that goes to show the national, quote-unquote, conscience of the Heat. You follow these playoffs. I'm a little bit more reserved because I do respect the Celtics at this point. But, no one's played as well as Butler. And their supporting cast has played as well as anyone outside of like 1 or 2 games. What is your opinion of the Heat at this point?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why there's some skepticism is, we've seen Jimmy Butler go up and down in the playoffs, and certainly he's been, fantastic in the first 2 series, and maybe there's, from the line makers and others, some feeling that he's going to, swing back the other way and come back to earth a little bit, especially with, some of the injuries that they're dealing with. That might be part of it. They're not a great 3-point shooting team, obviously, and and at least they haven't been in the playoffs, and that's been such a that's been such a key across the postseason. So that might factor into it. But yeah, I mean, it's strange because this is a team that, when you look at what they've dealt with going back to October, the number of injuries and the wave of COVID that they had to deal with, and the guys they were signing, I mean, they were signing guys because they were nearby. They were signing guys, because they were in the same zip code, and that's they just needing warm bodies. And they're still winning games. So this has been as mentally tough a team as you're going to find anywhere in the NBA. So it is a little surprising that they don't get their due. I think part of it is probably the superstar and Jimmy Butler isn't quite as highly rated as a Kevin Durant or Giannis Antetokounmpo. Maybe part of it also is they're viewed as having had an easy path to the Eastern Conference Finals. That might be part of it as well.
Sean Deveney, Heavy.com, outstanding NBA basketball writer, been around a long time, Sports Illustrated among his credits on his resume, and always with a great opinion. I want to say, and we've killed off many people, that were still alive. Where we killed off Joe Pepitone the other day on the show, thought he was dead. But didn't Paul Silas, did he check out, Paul Silas? Because when you were speaking about guys they signed, I was thinking, hey, maybe Paul Silas gets a few minutes and they start waving a white towel around. But now that I thought of it, didn't he die? I mean, is he still with us, Paul Silas, dead or alive? That would be the question.
He is still kicking around, Paul Silas. His son is the head coach of the Houston Rockets, in fact.
All right, so there was no consideration given by the Celtics to signing Silas for a few minutes. Now, one big differential, and I think it's fairly obvious, and you start examining Sean Deveney, it sounds cliche to say like keys to the series, and there are a few obvious ones, defending Tatum for the Heat and what to do about Jimmy Butler and how to handle him if you're the Boston Celtics. But Atlanta, I thought, was a very poor defensive team, and the 76ers, they fell apart. Harden was out there looking like Butterbean Esh. I mean, he couldn't guard Lubie at the other end of the court. And Embiid was clearly hurting. Maxey, plays with intensity on the defensive end. But other than that, I mean, you're not getting a lot of defensive minutes out of Danny Green or some of the other supporting players. The Celtics are an outstanding defensive team. So how, in your opinion, does that change, if anything, the approach of the Miami Heat? Because they're not going to be able to do some of the things that they were able to get away with and maybe, get by with a few mistakes and maybe not 100%, efficiency on the offensive end against a Celtic team that defends a whole lot better than either of their first two opponents.
Yeah, I think, Grant Williams was really a big key for the Celtics, guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo. He had the 27 points in Game 7, so really kind of made a statement there. But really throughout that series, he did a good job when they left him individually on Giannis. Now, he's not the quickest of foot, and that's an issue, but he's a very smart defender, very physical, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So I wonder how he's going to handle Jimmy Butler, who's a little more agile and doesn't have the same size as Giannis. Frankly, as good as Giannis is, Butler is a little craftier. So I wonder for a young guy like Grant Williams, how is he going to handle that? That to me is probably the most important matchup for the Celtics. But you're right. I mean, Marcus Smart is a great individual defender. Derek White, the guy they traded for from San Antonio at the trade deadline, has shot the ball terribly, but they've been happy with him because of the way he's defended. Assuming Robert Williams can play and be effective, he's a big part of what they do defensively. So yeah, they've come a long way defensively. That team, they switch a lot. It's very tough to get favorable matchups against them. The way you can't target James Harden the way, they don't have a guy like that who's the weak spot who you can target the way you'd have with a team like Philadelphia or certainly Atlanta.
Sean, we joked about coming into this year, Defo and I, when they made some of their signings, going and getting Morris, trading and bringing in Lowry and getting Tucker, that the Heat and the Knicks of the 90s would be scared of this team, as tough as they are with a Jimmy Butler and a Bam. Now, Lowry isn't going to play in this game, and Morris hasn't really been a part of the rotation, but PJ Tucker has, and it sort of goes just to combine that the Celtics Bucks series and this series. It felt like the Bucks were missing that, and it felt like the Heat last year were missing that, and it feels like PJ Tucker, as quiet of a signing as it was, if you watch the Heat in these playoffs, outside of Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker's been as consistent as anyone for the Miami Heat, and he brings out sort of a toughness that Bam had 2 years ago and he didn't have last year. To me, a big key in this series is PJ Tucker, because he's not only a physical, tough defender, but he's also an instigator, and it seems like the Celtics sort of fall prey to that at times.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and it can make shots. I mean, if he's knocking down 2 or 3 3-pointers, that can really make a difference in their offense and how you have to guard him. But yeah, I mean, the Celtics are a team that if you had to find a weakness, even with the way they played, is that they're still untested. They may be a little fragile. That's something that we definitely saw earlier in the year when they were consistently blowing 19, 20-point leads in the second half of games. The way they really it wasn't very hard to get them off their game mentally. Now, TJ Tucker can come in and mix it up and throw some elbows and pick some people off. That could work to the Heat's advantage. Don't forget, though, that one of the things that happened in that game 6 against Milwaukee for the Celtics was Giannis kind of hands it up a little bit after a dunk, and Al Horford went crazy after that for 30 points. That can backfire, but certainly, yeah, for the Celtics, they've not been the toughest team mentally over the course of this entire season. That's changed in the last few months, but that would still be a question mark for me, and certainly PJ Tucker, the guy who can poke that button.
Catch his work at Heavy.com. Sean Deveney, NBA analyst and writer, with us here on the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, Mike Lubitz. All right, so earlier this season, and you saw the Celtics were on a run, as you mentioned, after December, and I'm watching a Celtics game on a Sunday, and I'm looking over to the bench, and the guys don't wear suits anymore, the head coach, so maybe not as easy to pick out. And I'm thinking, who is this coach, right? There's a guy shouting instructions. I didn't know anything about this Udoka. And yet he obviously must have, found some kind of, symmetry between Jaylen Brown and Tatum during the course of the year. I don't know if that was, his influence, or the players just decided to, work things out, because there was all this speculation that they couldn't coexist, that they had similar styles, and both guys needed a ball, and all of the common rhetoric that would go along with, kind of a Kobe Shaq sort of thing. And you thought that might have been a dynamic there, but Udoka, I mean, all of a sudden became a genius, and now is recognizable around the league. So, how would you characterize what he's been able to do, and maybe embellish a little bit of his background? And then B, how does he match up against Eric Spoelstra, who, also came in, and everybody's like, who the hell is this? This guy was like filming Mickey Harrison's son's bar mitzvah. And, now he's deemed to be one of the top 15 coaches all-time NBA. So how would you assess the coaching matchup in this particular case? And do you think it's going to, be an influence on the series one way or the other?
Yeah, Udoka has been a guy who, he's worked as an assistant. He's been a popular assistant. He's been sort of mentioned, one of those guys who year after year is mentioned as a potential candidate for head coaching jobs, but just hasn't been able to get it until now. He was a journeyman player, kind of got by more on, toughness than skill. Lasted 7 or 8 years in the NBA before jumping into coaching. The thing that's been different about him compared to Brad Stevens, who's the guy, of course, who had been the Celtics coach up until last year, since 2013. Stevens definitely handled pro players like a college coach. In other words, he didn't really challenge them a lot, certainly not publicly. There was sort of a little bit of a hands-off mentality. Udoka's been the opposite. He's come in and he's been tough on them right from the get-go. Like I said, they blew a lot of leads early on in the season. He was not afraid to go out and be, ticked off in the press conference. And that's completely different than where the Celtics were under Brad Stevens. So I think that's been a big change. He has toughened them up. And he's been consistent with that. Even when things weren't working, he didn't change his style. And then the other thing is just the defense, just the X's and O's, the switching defense, which is fairly similar to what Spo does, where they switch a lot of things and they trust different players to handle different matchups, different assignments. That's been something that's been different with them as well. So, Udoka's done a terrific job, but he's never been in the position that Eric Spoelstra's in, and Spo has been through this so many times before with different teams and different looks that you've got to give the coaching advantage to the Heat, even though, like I say, Udoka's done such a good job.
Sean, last couple of things here with Sean Deveney. I do want to move off the series for a second, considering there is another series, and it's a series that, especially for a league like the NBA, that is the definition of chalk. It's rare that a team that is as strong as this, the one team in the NBA that people thought was above everyone else was the Suns, and they continue that into the playoffs. And the Mavs, Luka's a special player. We put him in the top 5, top 3, wherever you rank him. But that team doesn't have the numbers the Suns have. That team doesn't have the talent the Suns have, we thought. And then Spencer Dinwiddie became the guy we saw with the Nets a few years ago. And Jalen Brunson put on a Villanova jersey. And that team woke up and scared the crap out of the Suns to the point where now the Suns got dominated 2 games in a row and aren't in the playoffs anymore. What do you do, not even with that series, what do you do with the Suns? Because 2 weeks ago, they seemed like a burgeoning dynasty. Now Chris Paul's old. DeAndre Ayton gets phased out of every playoff series once it comes crunch time. And Devin Booker, the star of all stars, was nowhere to be found when they put a double team on him. What are you doing with the Suns going forward? Because to me, there's a ton of question marks that we didn't have 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd say even 2 weeks ago, right? Yeah, I'd say DeAndre Ayton's probably your big issue right now because Booker. I mean, look, you got to count that he'll be back and that he'll make adjustments, and what you get with Chris Paul at his age. So the real question is, what happens with DeAndre Ayton? It was obvious. He played 17 minutes in that game 7. Monty Williams made it sound like he wasn't very happy with him, after that game. So, and there was already tension with the organization because he was due a contract extension last summer. It didn't get it. So there was obviously some stuff going on with the Suns and Ayton even before all this. So that to me is the real thing. He'll be a restricted free agent. There'll be lots of teams trying to line up the resources to go after him. And that could really change the complexion of that team that looked like it was going to be a factor in the league, for a few years at least. This could fall apart real fast.
Sean Deveney, Heavy.com with us here on the Defo Show. Jeff DeForest, Mike Lubie Lubitz. All right, all that being said about the problems maybe facing the Phoenix Suns who were in the finals last year and looked like they, after that regular season, you thought they would be in the finals, at least of the Western Conference again, and then, certainly be able to hold their own against Golden State. They don't get that far. In fact, they lose a Game 7 that everybody presumed they were going to win. And while it's one thing to look at the Suns, somehow Dallas was able to just absolutely roll them over in that game. Now, part of that might have been due to the fact that ESPN featured Stephen A. Smith the night before, guaranteeing that Dallas would blow out. That Phoenix would blow out the Dallas Mavericks. I have to admit, I expected Phoenix to prevail in that game. I was shocked to tune in and see them down 20 in the early stages of the second quarter. So what chance would you give Dallas of being able to proliferate this whole run that they're on now and survive against Golden State?
Yeah, the defense, and you've got to give Jason Kidd credit as a coach, which not a sentence I imagined I'd be saying, just a few short months ago. You got to give him credit as a coach because he, that defense for a team that's pretty much the same as they were last year, arguably worse, individually in terms of defensive end, but better as a unit defensively. They've been really, really good to the point where if you can get what Luka does, and then just get one other guy. Whether it's Jalen Brunson or Spencer Dinwiddie, they had the game with, Dorian Finney-Smith hit a bunch of threes. So you get Luka and one other guy, the way they defend, you're going to have a chance to win some games. Having said that, Golden State has been pretty impressive. They still haven't played the level of defense that I think they will. But just the fact that they've been able to pull everything together. Don't forget, Steph Curry was hurt coming into the playoffs. He was coming off the bench to start the postseason. Golden State, to me, they look like a team that just keeps getting better here in the playoffs. And I think that's going to be a little too much for Dallas, even with the way that they've defended. You'd like to see Curry, get in a better rhythm, but I think that's coming, and I think this is going to be a good series for the Warriors.
All right, one final NBA footnote. What happens with James Harden? I was reading about his circumstances in Philadelphia. It doesn't seem like he was getting any overwhelming ringing endorsement. We know that Morey, the general manager there, has been united with Harden in the past and decided to go ahead and bring him back at great expense to hopefully propel the 76ers to a title. And he got a shell of what he had with Harden in Houston. It appears like he's showing more signs of being a shot fighter than he is of regaining his superstar stature. So what do you do? He has an option to come back. I guess, he can go ahead and trigger like a $47 million deal with the 76ers next year, who may not want him. And do you see somebody going ahead and giving him the kind of money that he would command if he gets a max deal somewhere else?
It's one of those situations where both teams, both sides really have painted themselves into a corner. Mm-hmm. If you're Philadelphia, you would like to see James Harden opt in and take that $47 million next year, because that way you don't have to commit to him beyond age 33, which at this point is looking pretty risky. But if he opts out, you don't have much choice. I mean, you got to bring the guy back. You put so much into bringing him to Philadelphia that if he opts out, there's no way you can just let him walk. And from his point of view, on his side, there's also not going to be a ton of teams who are going to knock themselves out to give him $45 million a year at this point. So, both of these sides are sort of in this limbo with each other. But $47 million for next year, if the Sixers, if he were to accept that and go with that, then I'm sure the Sixers would be very happy, because otherwise, if he opts out, they're going to be in a position of giving this guy, probably not the full max, but something in the range of, 3 years and $120 million, something in that range, maybe even more than that, for a guy who, can you rely on him on this point? It doesn't really look like it. But like I said, they're sort of taken in a corner with this at this point.
His training table is the strip club buffet at lunchtime, I think. It looked like he'd been hitting it pretty hard, as he gave zero effort and had no impact in those last couple of losses to the Miami Heat. All right, should be a lot of fun. Both series getting underway. The Heat tonight against the Boston Celtics, and tomorrow night Golden State and the Dallas Mavericks to decide the NBA champion. Do you, Sean Deveney, have an opinion as to who's going to ultimately triumph in this thing?
Yeah, I think we'll wind up seeing the Warriors win a championship. Oh. I think, really, you can look at any of the four teams and it'd be a great story. I think the Warriors would be especially good, though. Coming back with Klay Thompson after the 2 years out, and then kind of giving one last push with Draymond Green and Steph and Klay Thompson. They've got a lot more depth than they get credit for. So I'm going with the Warriors at this point.
Okay, I'm sure that's not an uncommon opinion. Excellent. We hope to talk to you again. Thanks for joining us here on the Defo Show. Sean, it's always great talking to you anytime about NBA baskets, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again next week as things develop in these two series, and we get closer and closer to a conclusion and crowning a champion in the NBA. Heavy.com is where you find him. Sean Deveney, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, one and all, for tuning into the Defo Show with Lubie here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Sean Deveney, I don't know if he's high on the Heat. He didn't really give a pick in the conference finals. He is leaning to the Warriors for the whole thing. But look, you have Steph. Clay's playing better. Draymond. You've infused Poole, some other guys. And they played really well. They played consistently well. he does feel like the Heat are not getting enough attention. He does feel like the Heat are sort of being forgotten. And he does feel like people are leaning to the Celtics. And they played well the second half. The Heat played well all year. So it is a little strange. And I guess people supposed to think the Heat had an easier route. Well, the Heat just played really well. I don't know. The Nets were not what people wanted them to be. The Hawks were actually a better playoff combatant than the Nets. And the Bucks without Middleton it was like the Sixers with a banged up Embiid. I mean, the Bucks without Middleton should not have been that team that the Celtics struggle with to that level. Like, I'd rather have played the Bucks without Middleton than the Celtics. So, whatever. Let the national media do what they do. They've done it all year. I hope the Heat are listening to every single word. This team is full of a bunch of guys, heart, hustle, whether they're stars or the lowest man on the roster. This team has thrived off of being disrespected. They continue to be disrespected as the Celtics are the favorite in the series overall. I am strongly behind the Heat, of course. I actually do feel good about the Heat. I'm nervous about this series because the Celtics are the best team overall they faced so far. We'll see the conference final. So the party gets started tonight. Of course, the Panthers as well. We'll talk about all that. Check us out in the morning. Just Google The Defo Show, DEFO. Check us out. Our exclusive content podcast, The Believe Network, Believe.com. Search After Hours. And each and every day right here, our South Florida content, The Defo Show with Lubie on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Hey folks, Tony Segreto here. You know, since day one, Catholic Health Services has been part of Old School. And since we've started letting people know about them, it's changed their lives. You see, Catholic Health Services, while being recognized as one of the top places for stroke rehab in the country, it's also about a group of people who not just excel in what they do, from the doctors to the nurses to the therapist, on and on and on. It's how they do what they do every single day that separates them from the pack. They do it with a passion, unmatched, and the inclusion of family in every step of the process. Trust me when I tell you this. If you want the best, unmatched rehab with a special group of skilled, caring people, there is truly only one place, and that one place is Catholic Health Services.
Recently, we realized it's not just hurricane season that can hurt us. Any time of year, things can happen to your home or business. And the insurance company can be your friend, but they also can be your enemy. Horizon Public Adjusters, Justina Testa, are here for you to help this process go so much easier. Before you call the insurance company, call Horizon Public Adjusters and Justina Testa at 954-809-8752. Would you go into court without an attorney? So why would you go up against an insurance company without Horizon Public Adjusters and Justina Testa? 7 to 10 times more money recovered with a public adjuster than if you went on your own. If there's no recovery, there's no fee. Give them a call at 954-809-8752. Why go up against insurance companies alone when you can have Horizon Public Adjusters and Justina Testa on your side?